In 1997, this picture went viral. People would email each other pictures of an ear mouse with absolutely zero context. So if you're wondering, this picture is real. It comes from a real experiment where scientists genetically modified mice to grow a human ear on their back, resulting in a life of torture and pain for the animals, as well as super hearing. After this picture went viral, a wave of outrage and protests started, forcing the lab to get shut down and saving these poor creatures. Or did it? The story I told is only half true, you see. So it is true that people did email each other with these pictures. The pictures also do come from a real experiment. However, the story behind the experiment is very different. So it starts with a scientist named Vacanti who got the idea from talking to plastic surgeons. You see, the ear is one of the most difficult parts of the human body to reconstruct. So patients with a missing or damaged ear have few good options. So what Vacanti did is he implanted a cartilage mold inside mice that would gradually grow into an ear-like structure. So in actuality, there was no genetic engineering involved, and the mice did not exhibit any signs of pain or super hearing. Vacanti's ultimate goal was to start implanting these molds inside patients, but because of a lack of funding, this problem still exists. But still, even after learning about Vacanti's intentions, some part of you probably still empathizes with the mice. Like, bro, imagine if you grew an elephant trunk between your legs. That'd be terrible. Humans will always have empathy for animals, but how close really are animals to humans? I mean, we can communicate with humans, directly know their thoughts that way, but we can't really communicate with animals. Or can we? Well, in 1965, we tried to teach a dolphin English. At a specially designed lab called the Dolphin House, Margaret Lovat lived in a flooded room with a young male dolphin named Peter.
Hey, Peter.
For about 10 weeks. The goal was to immerse Peter in a human environment to encourage language acquisition, similar to how human babies learn language through immersion. But Peter and Margaret ended up developing a much more intimate relationship. However, in terms of language, they immediately ran into some complications. So while Margaret was able to get Peter to get the general phrasing down,
1, 2, 3.
it was very difficult for Peter to make the actual human sounds, especially the M.
Oh, he just couldn't get it right, and he just would try and he would try. God.
As a result, Margaret ended up painting her mouth to try to get Peter to better understand the enunciation of her words. Ultimately though, I think this project was probably doomed to failure simply due to the differences in vocal anatomy between a human and a dolphin. But English isn't all that they did together. Now if you know male dolphins, you know that male dolphins can get pretty. So as a result, Margaret would often have to satisfy Peter's urges.
It was very precious, it was very gentle. Peter was right there, he knew that I was right there. Again, it was sexual on his part, it was not sexual on mine. Sensuous, perhaps. It would just become part of what was going on, like an itch. Just get rid of that, we'll scratch it and we'll be done, move on. And that's really all it was. I was there to get to know Peter. That was part of Peter.
Wow, I guess Margaret really was acting like a stepmom. So I think one question we probably all have is, were Peter and Margaret in love? Well, we will probably never know the exact answer. You see, this entire experiment was all funded by a guy high on LSD floating in a saltwater deprivation tank above them, trying to telepathically communicate with dolphins, who he thought were intelligent creatures brought by aliens. So yeah, look at my fundraiser, bro. I'm running out of money. As a result, Peter and Margaret were split up. Peter was moved to a new location where he committed suicide by not resurfacing for air. So while the Dolphin House failed to teach dolphins English, it did show that dolphins are intelligent and social creatures. And future research has shown that dolphins do indeed communicate with each other with a complex system of whistles. But I'm sure you're all wondering, what about that guy high on LSD? What was he up to? Well, his name is John C. Lilly, and during his LSD trips, he experienced crazy things like talking to interstellar crystals and merging his mind into a dolphin body, who he thought were some interstellar intelligent beings. So he developed a theory that the human mind could actually leave the body and travel to different dimensions. So how crazy was this guy? Are our minds and consciousness really independent? I mean, we have a concept of a soul, right? Like what happens to our minds once our body dies? Or is our consciousness actually just tied to a physical brain, stuck in our bodies. So I guess it's a pretty difficult question to experiment on and answer.
Oh well.
It's a good thing we have monkeys. In 1965, Robert White took 2 monkeys, cut off both their heads, and then swapped their bodies and heads. He was able to connect the blood vessels but not the nerves because the spine is simply too complicated. This resulted in a monkey that was paralyzed from the head down. However, the head could still hear, smell, taste, eat, and follow objects with its eyes. But after some time, the monkeys would die because of the immune system rejecting the head. But still, this does seem like pretty good proof that an animal's consciousness actually resides in your head. Cause like, what soul would still want to continue after all that? And guess what? You know what's better than a 1 head? What about 2 heads? Well, a Soviet scientist named Vladimir Demikov took a small dog, cut off their upper body, and attached that upper body to a big dog. This resulted in a 2-headed dog where both heads would act independently. In fact, the 2 dogs would sometimes even play with each other. How cute! But you know what's even better than a 2-headed dog? Well, what about a headed dog? Yeah, Vladimir also just took a dog head and then attached that to a specialized machine which would simulate the heart and lungs to keep it alive. This resulted in a head that could react to stimulus like sound and taste just like the monkey. But it's like just a head, you know? Now, all this might seem unethical, but this machine did inspire modern heart and lung machines, which are still used to keep patients alive today. And Vladimir's work was critical in helping scientists develop methods for human heart and lung transplants. Anyways, you're probably wondering about human head transplants. Obviously, no one would do that, right? Well, let me tell you about Sergio Canavero. So this guy has done several human head transplants on cadavers, and he claims to have solved the paralyzation issue from an experiment on monkeys, although this is still not verified.
How confident are you that it would work?
Absolutely confident.
100%.
100%.
And this guy, he really wants to do a human head transplant, man. He has had multiple opportunities, but every single time someone backs out. The thing is though, if you do manage to master the human head transplant, you do become theoretically immortal, don't you? I mean, you can just like keep on swapping heads between new bodies if your body ever gets sick. So maybe you will have 1 customer. Immortality would be so cool though. Imagine being able to see every single subsequent generation, not just your children, but every single descendant. See how entire societies evolve and change. But unfortunately, humans are not immortal, and we can't just study an entire civilization in 1 lifetime. Or can we? We may not be able to keep up with human generations, but we can create and follow a mouse civilization throughout its entire existence. So what if we created a mouse utopia, a land free of diseases and predators with abundant food and water? Well, John Calhoun tried this with an experiment called Universe 25. He started with 8 healthy mice that he placed in a pen. He gave them reams of paper to build nests, and built 256 separate apartments on the sides of the pen so they wouldn't even have to burrow. Now at the start, as you might have expected, the mouse population exponentially increased, quickly going from 8 to 2,000. Everything was going great, wasn't it? Or was it? Cause just 5 years later, that number, the mouse population, went to 0. What happened? What caused these mice to literally kill themselves in a utopia? So in the wild, male mice will fight each other to increase their place in the social hierarchy and for control of a harem of women. The loser of these fights will usually scamper off to try and find a different group to join. However, because of the pen size, after a male mouse is defeated, he was left with nowhere to go. So large crowds of defeated males would gather in the center of the pen. Fights would often break out between these mice for no reason. John called these leftover males the dropouts. Additionally, because of the large population, the alpha male mice were constantly being challenged for their harem. After constant fighting, many alpha males started giving up on protecting their harem, resulting in a lot of rogue males raiding their nests. This then caused a lot of female mice to behave more aggressively. They started defending themselves from these rogue males and also started kicking out their young prematurely and even attacking their own babies. Oftentimes, they would straight up just abandon their kids. The next generation, the babies that were abandoned or kicked out by their moms ended up kind of broken. The males of this generation became asexual. They stopped fighting and would spend most of their time grooming themselves and each other. John called these mice the beautiful ones, but but journalists often just call them autistic. On the other hand, the females would oftentimes be asocial and would hermit up alone in apartments, rarely interacting with other mice. As this broken behavior spread, the mice gradually lost the social ability to reproduce. So the mouse population dwindled, and less than 5 years after the first 8 mice entered the pen, the last mouse of Universe 25 died. Now, as you can imagine, there have been a lot of criticisms of Universe 25's methodology. To start, while the food and nesting material was unlimited, space was not. I mean, these mice were crammed in there like the average New Yorker. Another criticism was the environment, because in Universe 25 there wasn't really anything to do except for eat, sleep, fight, and breed. So why not try putting the mice in a more stimulating environment with like a bunch of wheels and stuff? And indeed, future follow-up experiments have shown that when you put mice in environments with better privacy and more stimulation, you do tend to get better results. But regardless, Universe 25 shows us what extreme changes can happen when an animal is placed into a very different environment than the one they evolved in. For 300 million years, every single human lived in a small tribe on the brink of starvation. But then, in the last 100 years, we suddenly have a near infinite access to calories. But it's not just food. We have a near infinite access to entertainment, to information, to people, to random stupid YouTube videos. All of which is such an insane change from the way humans have evolved, the way humans lived for most of humanity's existence. So maybe, through all of human curiosity and tinkering, the actual craziest animal experiment is the life you're living right now.